Hello and welcome to this post-bank holiday edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. I am barely still Baz Barrett after a few social beverages over the weekend. And with that, a shout out to friend of the show, Russell Homer of the Cayman Islands, who I had the Cayman Island Villains. So I had the pleasure of meeting up for a few drinks after the West Ham game, and his pal Steve, to drown our sorrows and reminisce about times of the past, and for me to be enlightened about times I don't remember because I wasn't around. So that was good. A positive out of what was perhaps an otherwise disappointing day. But speaking of a man who never disappoints, I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mr. Trinity himself, Will Forrest, and he has spent his bank holiday weekend at PC World, by the looks of it. For those watching the YouTube channel, he's seen my patented headphones and he's decided he wants a piece of that action, but he's gone big, literally, in all senses. That is a nice pair of headphones you're rocking there, Will. Our audio providers, listeners will just have to imagine a white pair of headphones.
To be honest with you, mate, they're not plugged in. They don't work. They're for the Xbox. I just wanted to take the piss out of you, but here we go.
Well, there you go. You can confirmation that this show's not scripted, as that was hook, line, sinker in terms of that. But speaking of things which are also run on the cuff, is our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby we are reacting to all things that are happening at the Villa at the moment, which is, as you'll see if you go on the Twitter page at Talk Trinity, a rumour mill of excitement, disappointment, drama, upset, intrigue. A bit like this show, really. But if you just want to have a watch of our previous episodes, then you can go and check out our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity. Or if you just like our audio tones, then our audio providers are the place for you for all our previous episodes and our future ones, hopefully. You can go on to Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, other ones, no doubt, by the time you listen to this. But speaking of things that you might not perhaps want to listen to, does bring us to the review of Sunday afternoon, events at Villa Park, 2 p.m. It is becoming an annual tradition to lose at home to West Ham, and it happened again. Aston Villa 0, West Ham 1. Poor day for Villa, poor day for Will. His birthday treat, he was so excited about going to the game. Probably wasn't excitement you were feeling at the end of the game, Will.
No, not at all. First of all, a massive shout out to James Benson, who very kindly hooked me up with a couple of tickets, 5th row, whole end, lower, right behind the goal. Absolutely beautiful seats, right on the aisle as well. Tell you, top quality.
It's all about an aisle.
Mate, that was the best thing about the day, was those seats, to be honest with you. I had a nice burger as well beforehand. It was so disappointing after the good enrichment that we had in the first half. The first half was, by all accounts, a performance to give you hope for the second. I don't think it was the best performance we've ever seen at all. We were good for the first half an hour. We were on top, in my opinion. I felt it changed a bit when Johnson went off for Kufal. West Ham started to get into the game a bit more. They didn't really trouble us. They had one attack on the edge of the box, which we managed to clear. We obviously got our goal disallowed from Conser. But then that second half, I mean, it was like having a birthday cake and you're blowing the candles out. You forget to make the wish, but you know what you're wishing for. And you think, this is beautiful. This is, it's not as good as my other birthday cakes, but it's still good. It's not a Colin the Caterpillar, which is a load of rubbish. No one likes them.
Still chocolate. Still chocolate you got. So you're coping.
I don't like chocolate cakes. Really weird. But yeah, you've got that, and then you take a bite into it, and it's lemon, and you're thinking, who puts lemon in a cake? You know what I mean? Or it's poo, and you're thinking, who puts poo in a cake?
Especially together. That is quite a mix.
oh, mate, whoever made it deserves a medal. But that second half, West Ham steamrolled us. They looked so much better in their 4-2-3-1. They realised where things were going wrong, and they mixed it up. And yeah, their goal was fortunate, but they had a shot, which helped them get that goal. And it's just we seem to lack that creativity, despite having Philip Coutinho and Emi Buendia and Leon Bailey. We're still lacking because they can't do it on their own, and they're never on the pitch together, really, to link up with one another. It seemed that our attacking play was focused on get the ball out wide to Luka Din, and there were times where Luka Din couldn't cross the road, and there were times where he was so isolated on his own, they just went backwards and they tried to play it across again, and West Ham just sat so patiently. And obviously, the idiot that they got in defence, that number 4, he was just clearing everything that came into the box as well. It was a solid performance from him. We weren't really at the races, and after the first half gave us hope and gave us some optimism there, we just faltered away. Gerrard needed to change it a lot sooner than he did. He needed to change the formation to match West Ham, or to put more pressure on the back line. And he didn't.
No, and I think in terms of the tactical shapes you mentioned from both sides did really decide the outcome of the game, or in particular the shift. In the first half, I agree, we had most of the ball. I mean, in terms of possession, West Ham had switched in league purposes to 5 at the back. They played it on Thursday night in Europe, I believe. And yeah, we were comfortable without really threatening, I thought, for the first half. But West Ham, to be fair to them, as you mentioned, they switched it up at half time, went to 4 at the back, got Declan Rice involved in the game more. And they were a completely different team second half. And we had talked in the build-up, the preview episode, about do we play 2 up front against West Ham, and we were umming and ahhing because of West Ham being a good team, but having not the best start of the season. So perhaps there was an element of we can go and get them if we play 2 up front. Didn't really, as I said, we dominated the game without creating much in the first half. West Ham in the second half, once they had that extra impetus from midfield, got more time on the ball, found that space, momentum shifted. We didn't change. We just carried on playing the same way. And it's one of those in terms of, it sounds obvious when you say it out loud. Moyes has 25 years managerial experience at least. Gerrard has 5, maybe, if that. Got out coached. Simply, like, it was very blatant in terms of Moyes saw the issues. Maybe the injury was a factor, but I think even because they did do a straight swap in the first half to go and play kind of that right wing back and then switch formation at half time entirely. It's you know, you can, it was experience management. I don't think it was only somebody who'd managed 25 years would have figured it out, but we just didn't react. And I think in terms of, you mentioned Din was getting forward, especially in the first half. I think it seemed to be the net result of that. I thought Cash wasn't able to get forward. I think maybe he was perhaps having to stay back because Din was going forward. There wasn't really that interplay, that change of, or even both going forward as we saw. I know it was against Bolton, but there was a lot more attacking intent against Bolton on Tuesday, getting it forward, getting those diagonals. Didn't really see any of that in terms of even in the first half when we had most of the ball. There was a little bit watching the Paul Lambert team in the first half, get the ball, nicely pass it around the halfway line, keep the ball, don't really look like we're doing anything. Maybe the disallowed goal put some false hope, belief in our team, thinking, oh yeah, we scored early, got it disallowed, this will be easy. And we just weren't able to knock on. And then second half, the fault in the system, you mentioned Zuma, he had a great game, I thought, but in terms of if you're just going to knock the ball up to somebody, who's going to win? Like 9 times out of 10, Kurt Zuma against Danny Ings or Ollie Watkins, it's going to be Zuma. He had a nice little pass on him as well, Zuma. To be fair, and it was a situation whereby we didn't react quick enough. Yeah, the goal was lucky, but it was coming, I thought, and we didn't really do anything after they scored. And then suddenly, with about 15 minutes to go, it's like, okay, let's get Leon Bailey on. Let's just throw something together, see what happens. It demonstrates that you can't just throw attacking players on the pitch and then magically think you're going to score. You got to have some semblance. And I think it, almost by the end, it was get Leon Bailey the ball. He doesn't know what he's doing in terms of where he's going. So that's going to cause some confusion. Buendia, there was one nice pass he had through, which just missed the toes of the centre forward. And perhaps if that would have been a couple of meters, even less than a metre one way, then that perhaps would have led to an opportunity. But it was a passive performance, both on the field and off the field, in terms of that tactical player. And it's a problem when you look in terms of where do you start in terms of all the buzzwords came out after the game in terms of there wasn't the intensity, we were passive, weren't attacking. It's got to come from somewhere, in terms of it's a worry in terms of, I don't think it's a situation, I'll open it up to you in terms of, I didn't think watching the game that it was a dressing room had gone, in terms of not wanting to play for the manager. It was a feeling of, we don't really know what to do if Coutinho can't go past four people when we're playing this narrow formation. And in terms of West Ham, we're able to comfortably deal with it. And it sounds stupid, what I'm about to say. It's true, but stupid. And, one of those comments which mean nothing. But I mentioned Declan Rice. We've had debates about should McGinn be playing, should Ramsey, Louise, Camara, Tim, whoever. No centre midfielder we've got can take a game by the scruff of the neck like Declan Rice. And that's stupid, I know, because Declan Rice is at least £100 million player and we haven't got them and they don't grow on trees. But I think in terms of it is a little, especially in that centre midfield where we lost the battle in the second half, like we took Louise off and brought Ramsey on. Yeah, Ramsey had a bit of form momentum, bit of pace, but it is a little like shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic in terms of that role in the centre midfield, because we just haven't got it's. You look at the attacking players and to turn around and say we haven't got the quality is baffling, worrying. Is that the manager's fault? Is that the player's fault? And I mentioned that I didn't think the dressing room was kind of behind, that he had lost the dressing room. Just because I want to ease this away from West Ham because it was too depressing. Sounds like there is one player who may have lost based on some tweets, statements, comments, promos that have been cut by the agent of Leon Bailey, who after the game appears to have come out and said, I didn't come to Villa to sit on the bench. Ajax have got some money in the pocket now. Pretty please, can I go to Ajax? What was your reaction to seeing those stories emanate? There were some comments before the game. They've intensified after the game. How were you reacting when you saw that over your cornflakes on Monday morning?
Well, to be honest with you, anybody who wants to leave can leave. Don't really care. If you don't want to be at the club, then go. Good riddance to you. We want people who are dedicated to playing for the team, who are there to make things happen for us, who want to take us forward. If Leon Bailey isn't happy that he's not playing enough, then by all means go and join somebody else, But there's a reason you're not playing. And that's because the manager doesn't think that you're doing enough, either in training or in matches. It's not for the manager to think, oh, I should give that player minutes. It's for the players to make the manager think you have to give me minutes because of the performances that I'm putting in. It's a strange one, isn't it? You're talking about the attacking creativity. Bailey, with a run of games without getting injured, could be amazing for us potentially, but I fear that he's going to be one of those signings who never quite does it for us, goes and joins someone else like Sporting Gijon or someone like that, smashes in 10 goals, then goes and gets a big money move to Valencia and sees out the rest of his career on the Costa del Sol, type of thing. When we've got the likes of Buendia and Coutinho and Bailey, you'd hope that they would be playing and they should have the creativity. But if they aren't creating, especially a player like Coutinho, who doesn't really seem that bothered at the moment, that's where I start to think maybe the manager hasn't got the support of everybody that he wants to have. I'm gonna call this now, and I was gonna wait for our transfer window Villa preview special. If Gerrard gets sacked and obviously he goes, I wouldn't be surprised if Philippe Coutinho left at the end of the season for a nominal fee or on a free transfer to Al Ittihad or somebody like that over in the Qatarian leagues, and got a big money move over there where they're paying the money, or over in China. It's just so frustrating, isn't it? There was all this hype around the likes of Coutinho, around Bailey, and they just haven't done it for us. They show a flash of brilliance, we get excited again, and then we realise, oh no, I've still got that horrible lemon taste in my mouth. It's the same with Buendia though as well. Buendia comes off the bench and he's a modern day Solskjaer. Really good, gets on the ball. He does everything you want Coutinho to do. He drops into the space, he gets between, goes to get the ball off the defenders, he'll run at them. He's a maverick. That's what you want Coutinho to be doing. Coutinho tends to stand still, move a few yards and wait for that ball to come to him. The problem with Buendia, though, as good as he is at his movement off the ball, which would probably be an 18 to 20 on Football Manager, he just doesn't seem to do very well when he starts matches. And I think that's what lets him down a little bit. But we definitely need creativity. We need something in the centre of the park, really, more than anything else, because none of our central midfielders are creative enough. I think out of all the ones you've mentioned, the one with the most dynamic attributes to them is Jacob Ramsey. Though the problem is he'll have a burst of a run, go past a few people, then you won't see him for 5 or 10 minutes. And then he'll do it again down the wing and you won't see him again for 5 or 10 minutes. And he'll do it again and then he'll get subbed. And it's like, well, that was brilliant. Who are you bringing on now to replace him? Oh, Nakamba. Great. It's just so frustrating to watch at the moment, and it's quite boring and predictable as well. And as you say, Declan Rice can take the game by the scruff of the neck, and he can turn it in West Ham's favour. He did at home to us last year in the 4-1. He did on Sunday. He showed up. I didn't think he was all that brilliant on Sunday, but he was a class above everybody else. Especially when they had players like Bowen and that who weren't performing. Bowen, my opinion, was in Chambers' pocket in the first half. Chambers handled him fantastically. The only player we've really got that could take the game by the scruff of the neck, Buendia, maybe Ramsey, but Ramsey's going to need a few years. He's still very young, and Buendia needs to do it from the start. But first and foremost, the manager needs to find a system and he needs to get those players back on side.
Yeah, I mean, my respect for Coutinho, I don't think it's a lack of effort. I think he is trying. It's just not quite working out for him. Yeah, very trying watching. Just not quite working out at the moment. And I think it is an element for systems. You have 2 ways of doing it as a manager. You pick your system that you want to play and you stick to it. And you say to the players, you play in this system. If you can't, you're off. I'll bring in players who can play in this system because that's the way I want to play. The other way is you pick a system to suit the players you got or you can bring in. And you're like, okay, ideally I'd like to be playing something else, but I'm a pragmatist. haven't got the players, so we'll do this, to suit the skill sets of the players. I think the issue we got at the moment, well, one of them, and in terms of, we were part of the people building the hype train up at the start of the season with those crazy 8th place predictions that they look like now, is I think with Gerrard doesn't know which way to go in terms of, we appear to be meandering from one system to the other. One he wants to play, one he thinks he needs to play because of the players, and it's just not really happening in either system. We're not. We're just falling short, kind of in all aspects, really. And I'd say it must be difficult for the players not knowing what shape we're going to be playing.
I think there's one way that most fans want Gerrard to go at the moment, and it's not one of these ways. No. It's that way. The way of Scott Parker. And there's been rumours, haven't there, over the last couple of days that Pochettino has been sounded out, and I think that's part of the Villa problem at the moment. In regards to everything, you just don't really know what's for the best or what's going on. There's fans here who think, Pochettino, what a great manager, and there's other ones who'd be thinking, why would he come to the Villa if we did have that vacancy, which, who knows, may come up within the next few weeks or so, dependent on results going forward. But I'll let you do that link later on. It's all just strange. But Gerrard, I mean, the boos at the end and that, I think, said a lot. The fact he went straight off, hardly any of the players clapped. The fans was quite noticeable as well. Declan Rice, funny enough, clapped everybody in the stadium.
Well, you can do that when you win. To be honest, I couldn't quite tell whether the fans were booing Declan Rice or a few of the Villa players who had gone over to applaud by the end. I couldn't quite tell.
I think it sounded like it was a boo of the performance and the manager. There were a few shouts of, you don't know what you're doing, it's time to go, and all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, it is what it is. It was 1-0, and we can't do anything about it now.
No, what we can do, now you mentioned the POC box, we'll mention that briefly, because in terms of, we've previously said that we thought Gerrard would have 10 games until the Forest game, or maybe until the World Cup break, and the board would reassess the situation then. And as they proved with Dean Smith a year ago, they will be ruthless in making a change if they think there could be somebody better along. Last year, they thought that was Steven Gerrard. This year, the rumours are Pochettino. And it's rumour season. Don't know how true it is or not. But there are going to be a few clubs glancing at each other, going, I don't know how long Pochettino is going to stay on the market. Let's, do we jump in terms of where we perhaps revisit who we got as manager? I mean, funnily, I will say I don't think that's why Bournemouth got rid of Scott Parker. So I'd say in terms, I'll be very surprised if Pochettino turns up on the South Coast. But
Dyche will end up there.
Well, I suppose he is the resolute manager, and I suppose if you've just been smacked 9-0, you might have a look at the defence at that stage. But in terms of, you said there's a potential viewpoint of why will Pochettino go to Villa? That is a question some people are going to ask. What I'll say to that is, you have a look at the Premier League in terms of maybe not the table so much at the moment, but the so-called bigger clubs. You got Man City with Guardiola. He's going nowhere. Jurgen Klopp, Liverpool, is going nowhere. Man United, Ten Hag, is going nowhere for the moment. Chelsea, Thomas Tuchel, is going nowhere. Spurs, Conte, is going nowhere. West Ham, Moyes is going nowhere. Wolves, Lager, you have to think he's going nowhere after they've just given him some nice money over the last week or so to go and buy some players. So you're looking at it in terms of which clubs at a Premier League level, if the other leagues are available, of course. But if you're looking at the Premier League, what you'd call the so-called top jobs realistically aren't available, I don't think, at this moment. So you look, at the second kind of tier of Premier League clubs, perhaps the third tier if you're being not very generous. Clubs that kind of spring to mind where there may be people looking to maybe some movement. Well, as Villa, as we just mentioned, Leicester would be another one. But then you look at it in terms of Villa, we, as far as we're aware, based on the kind of the last few transfer windows, have got some money to spend. And we got some decent players. We thought we were coming eighth, which is kind of a bit biased perhaps. But the potential is there, as opposed to Leicester, where no money available. They've brought nobody. Players going for the exit door. Fofana, at time of recording, looks like that he is about to go to Chelsea, which is a massive loss for Leicester in terms of that defence. So I'm just looking, in terms of some other teams you could throw out there. Palace, not getting rid of Vieira. Brighton, in terms of they're not going to sack Potter to go and get Pochettino. No. So Newcastle, and they've started the season all right. So that would be incredibly ruthless. I can't rule it out because, sometimes if a club thinks that Pochettino will be there 4 or 5 years, give Eddie Howe the heave-ho a nice bit of money. But realistically, in the Premier League, us, Leicester, possibly Newcastle. I don't think that's such an outlandish shout. I mean, of course, if Pochettino turns around and says, I don't want to be in manage a club who's not in Europe, then that pretty much takes out everybody in England. And then perhaps you go somewhere else. But there's not too many jobs. And it gets bandied about quite a few times by any new manager who comes into a club. The projects and kind of similar things. Gerrard's got given a certain amount of money. Dean Smith got given a certain amount of money. Pochettino, bit of money. Brilliant coach, I think, in terms of especially as Southampton, great job there. Spurs, great job there. It might be my delusion speaking, but I would say in terms of 10 games for you at the start of the season in terms of Gerrard, look at the situation, review it. I think that time is going forward in terms of, funnily enough, then it could be a nice full circle. Dean Smith last season sacked after we lose away at Southampton. Southampton at home, Friday the 16th of September, on Sky again. That Southampton game was Friday night on Sky last season as well. We've got Leicester before then. 3 points after 8 games, he's getting the sack.
I saw something the other day, very much in line with what you've said. We've lost to West Ham. We've got Arsenal and Man City, and there aren't many people who think we'll pick up points there. You then play Leicester, who won't have won before they play us, but we'll gift wrap it for them. That's 4. You lose to Southampton. That's 5 defeats on the trot, exactly the same as Dean Smith a year ago with that Friday night fixture. It wouldn't be a surprise at all. I mean, Pochettino, I think, would be most or a lot of fans' first choice. He's not everyone's. We know that. There's clamour for Graham Potter at Brighton. And you've got Brighton fans saying, well, why would he join you?
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate question, I think, to be fair.
I think it's a fair enough question. But when you look at what facilities and what's on offer and which team is likely to progress more because they've got bigger finances, they've got better players and whatnot, I think 2 years down the line, Potter would do a better job with these Villa players than he could do with those Brighton players.
Well, I don't know about that. In terms of, at time of recording, we're recording this, we're going to do an Arsenal preview in a minute, so you're probably sussed we're recording it before the Arsenal game. Looking at the table, at time of recording, Brighton are in 4th, 10 points from 4 games. Mass fans will tell you that's 3 wins and a draw. Only 1 goal conceded during the course of the season, which I think was an own goal from recollection. Do I think they'll come fourth? No. But he's building something there. And I think that, you can say in terms of people, last season were getting a bit unhappy with Graham Potter at Brighton during the course of the season. They had a good start, and then it kind of went away a bit in the middle. I mean, even we beat them twice, kind of after November. But I don't think it is as clear cut to say, get him into Villa, repeats what he does. He could do a very good job at Villa, and it's not me saying he won't succeed at Villa, but I'm saying in terms of, I don't think it's quite as clear cut that he can't carry on doing as well at Brighton as he would at Villa, because in terms of, it's a double-edged sword in terms of how many managers have we had coming into Villa over the years, the bigger club kind of expectation, come from somewhere smaller. I mentioned Lambert came in from Norwich, for example, not because I want to bash Lambert, but I don't miss the opportunity too much. It is a thing, Brighton is happy. He's got the keys to the kingdom, as it were. Chairman on board. They have a system in place over there. They buy players young. They have a year or two at Brighton. If they perform, they get the money back. I mean, Cucurella, for example, the latest one, 60 odd million for a left back. It's mad. That expectation is different for coming into Villa in terms of the role. The brief isn't going to be come in, buy some young players from various places that perhaps the bigger clubs haven't looked at, get them in for a couple of years, then sell them, and then do the same again. It's whether rightly or wrongly, the expectation of Villa is different. It's you build a side, you keep it together, you get into Europe. That's what we've been trying to do for 10, 15 years. And I don't know if it's that simple.
I think that in itself as well is a bit of a law, in regards to, you don't have to bring your player in, build them up, sell them for a load of money to a desperate Sky 6 team. Cucurella, Chelsea came in, they didn't particularly need him. They've come in because they saw that Man City were having difficulties buying him. They've added him to their squad, and it's one of those, we'll buy all these players to make ourselves stronger. They might not play all the time, and in 5 years' time, we'll Ross Barkley them off out of nowhere, But I think that's a draw in itself. I mean, we've had a couple of chats, and we don't 100% agree on everybody that we think that we should be linked with. Pochettino, we both would like at the Villa. Potter, yes. You've mentioned Thomas Frank again, who, I don't know, could potentially be very good. I think the law of, again, joining a team where he doesn't have to sell his players and who are a bit more established would be good for him. There's Brendan Rodgers, who's he has a bit of a shelf life, 3 years, and it tends to get down the pan. Would you take Rodgers from Leicester only for them to go and get someone who you want? Or would you try, or do you go and get someone who you want first? The other person, and I don't think he'd join us at all. I know that you will go, no, and you will do, and rightly so. He's a Mourinho. I like him. I don't think he's what he used to be. I also don't think he'd come to the Villa, if I'm being completely honest. Whereas maybe a Pochettino with the right money, with the right structure around him in regards to player recruitment and being given the project of building us up like he did Southampton and Tottenham, could be good. We probably need a manager to come in now who, I don't want to say he's bigger than the club, because I don't think anybody should be bigger than the club, but a big name manager coming to a middle to smaller placed Premier League team, because that's what we are really at the moment. We're middle to smaller placed in the league, despite our delusions of grandeur with our 8th place finishes. We need someone to come and go, right, okay, I've got you by the scruff of the neck. I'm going to drag you up to my level, and together we're going to reach heights that we haven't done since the 80s and, early, mid-90s.
What I'd say about Mourinho, and there's lots of things I could say about Mourinho, but I think the one thing that should just rule him out instantly is that getting Jose Mourinho in is an admittance that we just throw the last 5-10 years we've spent building the academy, throw it in the bin. And we shouldn't do it. Mourinho has no interest particularly in bringing young players through because he wants results now, which some people might argue is what we need. I think you need to look at a long-term view. Mourinho, 3 years and out, pretty much every single club he's been at, with the exception of Chelsea, what I can think of. Less and less returns as time's gone on. I think in terms of if you're looking for, and it might be delusional Pochettino, in terms of it could be a very quick conversation with him going, nah, you're all right. But Mourinho, I don't think builds into that long-termism, which I think we do need to have one eye on in terms of if we are changing a manager. I mean, we've mentioned that.
Very good point.
I'm saying we mentioned that this may potentially, and we're rumour speculating, may be happening if we kind of lose our next few games. But what if we don't lose our next few games? What if it's all a redundant conversation because we are going to go and win our next 2 games? And you are going to find out now whether we think, on talking to Trinity, we are going to go and get the results because we are doing a double preview special. Mainly because we can't face the prospect of being depressed 3 times in a week. So we're kind of condensing it down a bit. But we are going Wednesday nights to the Emirates, 7:30, to go and play Arsenal. They are top of the league at time of recording before playing us. They are the only team in the Premier League with a 100% record. You usually say, Will, that a team who was struggling, case in point, West Ham, hadn't won, hadn't scored, they get a result against Villa. But the flip of that, a team that's flying high gets their wings clipped when they play Villa. Here's your chance to prove it, Will. What do you think of Arsenal?
I mean, you'll obviously be very happy with the start that Arsenal have had to the campaign, being that closet gooner. Gabriel Jesus has been fantastic for him, hasn't he?
Yep.
And I think everybody knew he was going to be good for him, especially playing as a central striker rather than a winger. He showed at Man City when played up front, he could do what they needed him to. There were games where Aguero was dropped for him. Sergio Aguero, one of the greatest Premier League strikers of the last decade, if not the Premier League era. They've invested very well, haven't they? Zinchenko, a good signing. One of the better decisions they've made this summer is deciding to keep William Saliba around. He's done excellently. Yeah, he got an own goal against someone, but he's been fantastic in the other games. Have Arsenal really been tested yet by anybody? I'm trying to think of their games off the top of my head. Palace, the first game, they won that quite comfortably. They played Fulham in their last game and they scraped through there, didn't they? Nope. I know they beat someone a few weeks ago by a few. Bournemouth, wasn't it?
Yep.
They scored that fantastic goal from the one side of the box and bent it in. Can't remember their other game.
Leicester, they beat 4-2. Was their other game?
Yes, the Jamie Vardy dive. But I mean, you've got the likes of Odegaard, who's been great this season, really running the game, new captain for him as well, and showing what he can deliver as a captain. We know all about new captains this season.
Yep.
They're playing the system that suits them and they're putting players into those positions to help them. They've done very, very well. And for us to get a result against them, I think we need, I'm going to be quite drastic here. I think we need a complete change of formation. And we need to make sure that we've got some pacey wingers that can attack the likes of Ben White and Kieran Tierney. Tierney, very good player. Ben White isn't as bad as everybody makes out him to be.
He's not, but if you're trying to draw up a list of Arsenal players to target, he's near the top of that list.
Yeah, and I think, for me, you sit back a bit more. You played a 4-1-4-1. and you go and break them down where you can, and you maybe gamble with a positional term. I mean, ideally, we all know that we would like this game to be the sort of game that we're going out trying to win. That's where we want Aston Villa to be, competing with the top six, thinking that we can go toe to toe with them and not have to sit back and hopefully get a result. It's not the case at the moment. We need to try and get a result. Gerrard needs a result more than anything. We're likely to lose, based upon what's going on at the moment at both teams. So why not try a few different things? Why not have Bailey on one wing, have Ramsey on the other wing, or potentially even a Matty Cash with a Young behind him so that you've got that extra defensiveness, or the other way around. Have Kamara as your defensive mid, and then whoever is in midfield out of McGinn or Louise, really, is joined by Emi Buendia. And put Emi Buendia in the centre because he doesn't mind a tackle. He'll get forward, he'll get on the ball, he'll try and create, he does the defensive work, and leave Ollie Watkins up front on his own to try and hold that ball up and run the lines, and go for it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of, on the assumption we're going to be defending a lot or not having a lot of the ball, which I think is a safe assumption to make, we need an out ball. I agree. Mm-hmm. So in terms of who we got for that out ball with pace, provided he's still at the club on Wednesday night, that's Leon Bailey. I think he plays. Would you play Nakamba alongside Kamara? Would you go at least two defensive midfielders in the centre of the park?
No, I wouldn't. And the reason for that is I'd tell my four defenders, today you're defenders. You're there to defend. I don't want you getting forward and being a creative option. I'd get Kamara in front of them so that we can revert to a 5 when we're defending and really make it like a 5-4-1 where we're defending, and then push forward into a 4-2-3-1 or 4-2-4, if you like, as you get forward. I think if I was going to go with two players in the centre of midfield and go for a 4-2-3-1, it'd be Booba and either Tim or Dougie that I'd look to first.
I suppose it as you say, it depends how much you want to be able to transition onto the front foot when we do get the ball. Obviously, Nakamba is a little more limited when it comes to a forward pass than Dougie Luiz, but obviously, I would say Nakamba is better defensively than Luiz. So it depends. And if we're going to play that way, we need to get those transitions quick, which we didn't do on Sunday. And it is in terms of, that personnel. I mean, in terms of Ings, Watkins, do you play them both? Watkins on his own up front?
Watkins on his own up front. I think we touched upon it against West Ham. Against the better teams, we need to adapt our formation, and a 4-3-3 would probably be better. And that 4-1-4-1 turns itself into a 4-3-3 as well as a formation. We're getting Bailey up to support Watkins and getting Ramsey, who the other player will play out on the wing, to support Watkins as well. Just goes to show the lack of wingers we've got, though, doesn't it? Whoever thought it'd be a good idea to sell them all, I don't know. But those three have all got pace as well and don't mind running with the ball and trying to hurt teams that way. And then if you can get Buendia to push forward as well from a centre and be the creative spark alongside either an industrial John McGinn or a Dougie Luiz who's playing an 8 role and played well against West Ham, then that might give us a chance of snatching something, whether that be a 1-0 victory a la Old Trafford last year, or a draw, a la Leicester City, King Power last year.
Yeah, it's certainly feels a long way away from when we went there a few years ago under Dean Smith and destroyed them.
Oh, smashed them.
I think we're a bit away from that. Although Ross Barkley is available on a free, so you never know. Might him coming back. So you've teased us with the hope could be a draw, could be a smash and grab win. What are you predicting the score?
Well, let me tell you, I just get straight to the point. It's the hope that kills you, because I think Arsenal will beat us 3-0. I don't see anything else apart from an Arsenal win on Wednesday night. I think they've got the tails up in the air. They're looking good. We're on the back foot. They get an early goal and the game's over. There's no coming back from that. And I think that's what they'll do inevitably. So Gabriel Jesus, captain of my fantasy football team. Martinelli, vice captain.
So it's going to be a good day for you off the field, but not a good day for Villa on the field. And yeah, I agree. 3-0 Arsenal for me. So we're going to move with that positivity abound forward to what could get that smile back on your face after a potential midweek defeat. Oh, only Man City at home on Saturday. They have a striker you may have heard of who started all right in the Premier League, Haaland. I mean, I'd say in terms of the biggest hope, and I'm going to prejudge or preempt kind of what you may say, the biggest hope we got on Saturday against Man City is we come out the right side of Pep Roulette in terms of his selection. Because Guardiola has said once the games start coming thick and fast, midweek and weekend games for City, he's going to start rotating. Obviously, City are playing against, checks notes here, Nottingham Forest tomorrow night at home, then Villa away, then Champions League starts for them. So checks notes, away against Sevilla in the midweek after that. Do we get lucky in terms of we get the heavily rotated team with their eyes on a tricky away tie in the Champions League? Or do we get the full blast because they're playing the reserves at home to Forest earlier in the week? Or does it not matter because even their reserves are going to bang us 4-0?
I'm going to go the mix of everything that you've said there. I think we get lucky that the more second stringy players play. You know, you might see a cameo from a Jack Grealish.
I think he starts. I'm going to call it. He'll start against us.
Julian Alvarez maybe starts as well. If he doesn't against Forest, you see a few of those ones as well. However, all of those are going to have a point to prove, aren't they? Because they're all going to want to start against Sevilla. Such is the nature of the philosophy that Manchester City have got. They want to win every game. They want to win it by a cricket score, and they want to do it in style where they can. Man City, they like to deploy that formation where their wing backs get inverted, which is rather strange, but it works very well for them. Yep. They're not going to do that against us if we're playing a 4-3-1-2 or 4-3-2-1. They're going to rip us apart down the wings, I'd have thought, you know. I don't see how any team sheet that Man City puts out could favour us unless we find out that somebody at the Belfry has given food poisoning to all the Man City squad, and they're only at 10% of what they could be, and they're doing a Gary Lineker on the side of the pitch.
So they don't strike me as a team who would have a pre-match lasagna. I'd say. Yeah, I mean, in terms of when they had in an Nacho, he always used to bang them in against us. He always used to be yeah, like the game he'd start for Man City would always be against us, and he'd score. I mean, I agree. You know, in terms of whatever team they play, is going to be a top quality team. We're prejudging this because we don't know what the result is going to be on Wednesday or the performance. I mean, we've given our prediction what we think it would be. If we are putting our crystal ball into the future, do you go same shape again at home to City? Is there any other choice, really? Or do you do charge of the Light Brigade and go and charge them in a blaze of glory and have a go at Bournemouth and go, yeah, we see you 9-0. We got a word to say about that.
I think I just turn around to the 11 players and say to Emmy, well, you can use your hands. Everybody else, run around and get the ball. I don't know. Have you that? There's that meme going around at the moment, isn't there, of Steven Gerrard and Philip Coutinho, and Steven Gerrard says to Coutinho, "You know what to do," and Coutinho says, "No, I don't," and Gerrard replies, "Neither do I. Say hi to John." And you sort of against Man City, I think that is just amplified. I'd think about that 4-1-4-1 if it works well enough against Arsenal. You know, Neil Taylor made some very good points on the Football Daily podcast yesterday. He said Villa Park's a very wide pitch. He says it takes a lot out of you. So we've got to use the width. We've got to use the wingers. That's something that we're known for as a club as well, having good wingers. Tony Morley, Ashley Young, you know, James Milner. We don't have any wingers now.
Gonna say, Tony Morley's usually around on match day. You get him a pair of boots.
You know, maybe we pull the plug on the PSV AEG deal and give him a start on the wing at the weekend. I wouldn't be opposed to it at the moment, if I'm being honest with you.
I'd only allow that if friend of the show, Liam with the Qatar Lions, was flown in, especially pitch side, to present him with a pair of boots, golden boots, saying, "Go on, Anwar, you know what to do."
Yeah, no, you know, so maybe we amend it a little bit and we go 4-4-1-1, and we have two more solid defensive players in the middle there who are a bit more defensive midfieldy, such as Booba and Nakamba, just to put the tackles in and just to play the nice simple pass. Maybe even he gives Morgan Sanson a go. I can't see that happening either, because people are calling out him to play. What's he done wrong? Apparently, a lot of people at the Villa don't realise what he's done wrong either or what the problem is. 4-4-1-1. And then you get maybe, you know, Buendia or Coutinho in behind Watkins, and you just say, as soon as we get into their half, just go for them.
We got no choice. You know, in terms, it's one of those cliches. You got a couple of chances a game. If you got any hope of getting anything out of the game, you got to take it. But you mentioned 4-4-1-1. Is buried in that formation your prediction for the score, or are you going to be a little more optimistic for our home game?
What if you add all the numbers up together? That's how many City you'll get. I'm incredibly worried that Manchester City, especially if they bring their big boys along, could rattle a high number past us. And by a high number, I don't mean Liverpool-Bournemouth heights, but I think, and I don't think the worst Villa score ever heights, but I imagine they could get a few. However, I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic than that. Ever so slightly. I'm going to say we're going to score. Don't know how, but we will. They'll take pity on us at some point. Or Tony Morley will fit in for El Garci.
Yeah. Well, own goals also count. John Stones had one at the weekend. He might give us one for free.
Wow. Yeah, you know, he helped us in the cup final, didn't they? I'm going to, I hate to say it, and 5-1 Man City is what I'm going to go for.
Well, I'm going to say, you saying that was your optimistic one is actually going to be a situation whereby I am going to be more positive because I'm going 4-1.
Okay.
But 4-1 City, I should point out. I said earlier, I think Grealish will play. Funnily enough, I think that's our best chance of getting anything out of this or keeping it down. Not because he's a terrible player, but the cliche about getting the crowd on side, especially if we do play two defensive midfielders, as you point out, because we've talked about tactics during the course of this episode, different formations. We've tried to analyse deep into what we should be doing. If Grealish is on that team sheet for Man City, there's going to be one tactic and one tactic only for Villa, and it is going to be go and kick the proverbial out of him. That's it. That's all we got. And I think in terms of the crowd, I think if he starts, he'll get booed, I think. And, you know, some people might applaud, but I think, you know, in terms of, we previously had the conversation before in terms of, you know, our views on Grealish. And, you know, I've personally, in my lifetime, best Villa player I've ever seen. And in terms of, I think he contributed a lot, well, more than a lot to the club, and that should be respected. But 5:30 night, technically night game, I suppose. If we're going to have any chance of getting anything out of the game, you got to turn that place into a bear pit. And if that means getting at Grealish, we got to go and get him. I mean, admittedly, there's 10 other players on the field who are still going to be doing something. But and I think this is perhaps why we're both predicting 2 defeats in a week by comfortable margins, is when all you got left is almost kind of lower tier. Go and get stuck in, kick them about a bit. They don't like it up them, that type of thing. Yeah, it does show that we're a bit of a way away from where we want to be as a club. But it's like, you never know in terms of, I mean, on a positive note, I'll try and make this positive we can. For an hour at the Etihad at the end of last season, game plan worked perfectly. We were 2 up. We can do it. If you're looking for the positivity, that's about the extent you're going to find in here today. But I do, as you do, worry that this is going to be a cricket score. But realistically speaking, we mentioned it earlier, these two, like, if you're the board and you're thinking about, do we sack Gerrard or not, you shouldn't be basing it on these 2 games. And unless we lose like 15-0 and he comes out and basically makes certain slurs about the owners after the game, then yeah, you might want to get rid of them at that stage. But the big games for Villa, realistically speaking, Leicester, Southampton, they're the ones, if we get 2 wins out of those, then I think that buys Gerrard some time. If we lose those 2 games, then I think we're having a very different conversation when it comes to our transfer window review episode during the international break, if we've not done it before. But I think it's going to be one of those, when you go to the dentist, and nobody enjoys going to the dentist. Yeah. Yeah, that's why people don't go. So, yeah, that's why we're not going to Villa on Saturday. But, in terms of, you're not going to enjoy it. You sit there and take it. And then, you try and forget the mental scars after you've been. But hopefully there haven't been too many mental scars that the listeners have endured by listening to this podcast, because that does bring us to the end of today's show. Always leave on a high. So I will, before passing you over to Mr. Trinity himself for his final thoughts, plug the Nirvana, the Wonderland. That is the Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby you, if you dare, can keep up to date with all Villa news, rumours, signings, not signings, polls. I'm sure there'll be a few of those where we'll be seeking your opinion over the next few days leading up to those 2 games. You can listen back to our previous episodes on our audio providers, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google. You can go to our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity. If you remember a game from last season where we won and you want a bit of positivity, you can go listen to a previous episode. Go listen to one of our specials with friends of the show that we have had on. If you just want to be reminded that it's not all bad being a Villa fan, then you can go and check that out. But speaking of being reminded that it's not all bad, here's Mr. Trinity with his final thoughts.
Cheers, Tara. Thank you very much. As per usual, as Baz mentions, the Twitter page may have some more polls on this week, depending on whether we sign Jan Bednarek or not. Otherwise, it would just be Matty Cash.
Don't forget Craig Dawson.
But no, we appreciate all the views. We appreciate all the listens. And let's hope that come 10 o'clock on Wednesday night and come 10 o'clock on Saturday night, that it doesn't feel like we're pulling teeth, that instead we got a big smile on our face and a massive sugar rush from some positive Villa results, or maybe even just the sacking of Stevie G gone. But we won't know until then. And you'll find out with us as well when you join us next time on Talk of the Trinity. Until then, he tells me he's Villa till he dies, but he's got a half and half Arsenal shirt as well. I'm Villa till I die. Up the Villa.